King Leopold II, as the name suggests, was the second king of Belgium, taking the reins after his dad passed away in 1865. He ruled a small new nation in Europe, meant to serve as a buffer between the French and the Germans after the Napoleonic Wars. He had a fascination with Belgium gaining a colonial empire of its own, in spite of it being a neutral nation. A few places he wanted Belgium to have in its possession were the Philippines, Taiwan, and at one point Texas. However, all of these territories were already occupied by some other foreign power, or, surprisingly, didn't like some Europeans marching into their territory. But during the Berlin Conference, he would fulfill some of his ambitions. Since European nations couldn't agree on who should control this strip of overgrown jungle in the middle of the continent, Leopold said he should have it, as he claimed he would stop the slave trade there and bring civilization to the native people who lived there. Yet if you know anything about history, this never happened. He later sent explorer Henry Morton Stanley to go into the Congo River Basin and survey the area, and have tribal chiefs, most of whom were illiterate, unknowingly sign treaties, which had effectively put King Leopold in charge. Now with what would be the 11th largest country in the world in his possession, not in Belgium's possession, but in Leopold's personal possession, it was clear he had no intention of making it better, but rather squeezing as much money as possible out of the colony. Private companies were given chunks of land to gather resources such as ivory, tin, and most famously rubber, to sell back to home in order to make a quick profit. For the native people, life was extremely difficult, as they were effectively turned into slaves who were forced to accomplish extremely demanding rubber quotas. The people who didn't meet these quotas were given extremely barbaric punishments such as beatings, having their villages burnt, women were sexually abused, and a notorious punishment was having their hand cut off. That last one was especially common since soldiers were discouraged from using bullets, since the colony was to be run cheaply. This of course made the wounds infected with gangrene, and people would have to painfully stick their arm in a fire in an attempt to treat the infection, since they weren't being given the proper medical care if you couldn't figure that out by now. Fellow colonizers such as the UK and France later condemned Leopold's regime, even though what they were doing wasn't any better, and the term crimes against humanity became even more mainstream after the international community witnessed what was happening in the Congo. It's estimated that half of the people in the Belgian Congo died from factors such as exhaustion, malnutrition, and disease. Belgium's parliament eventually annexed the colony from Leopold in 1908, but that doesn't mean it was all sunshine and rainbows. In Rwanda-Urundi, after the Belgian parliament took control, the Tutsi, Hutu, and Twa were given identity cards in order to control the populations who lived there, going so far to stop people at roadblocks to enforce segregation. Despite all having a similar culture and way of life, these practices would later play a large role in fueling the Rwandan genocide in the 90s. When Belgium finally let go of all of her colonies in 1962, she took with her any competent official who could lead a nation. And in these newly independent territories, things reached a boiling point. Rwanda had ethnic tensions between Tutsis and Hutus. The Democratic Republic of Congo nearly collapsed when it became independent, and Burundi now had a military dictator rise to power.